These are wild.
Hi, this is Sarah Elder. Welcome to the Briefing Note podcast. And in another episode of What's Happening During This Absolutely Bananas Federal Election, I'm joined by Trisha Estabrooks, the federal NDP candidate in Edmonton Centre. Hi, Trisha.
Hey, good morning. It's
Good
so
morning.
awesome to be on your show this morning.
I'm excited to have this chat with you. Um,
Totally.
we didn't, maybe just tell me, like, what's your day going to be like today on the campaign trail?
Oh, I've covered a lot of politics as a former CBC journalist,
Mhm.
but to be the candidate in a close race, what's happening here in Edmonton Centre, we're having a blast on this campaign. Each day I wake up early, I come into the campaign office. This morning I came in and mopped the campaign office because we had a busy volunteer appreciation event on the weekend and there might have been some orange icing spilled on the floor. And so I came in, I mopped the office. I spend a lot of my mornings returning phone calls from folks, people who my team have met on the doors in the previous evening who are just wanting to connect. Some folks, here in Edmonton Centre who are thinking about the strategic vote and are wanting to talk to me and talk about the momentum that we're seeing on the doors. And then at about noon, first of all, I make sure I eat before I go out. Door knocking.
Good.
Door knocking is both exhilarating but also exhausting. So I have a pretty big meal at around, 11 o'clock. And then I go door knocking at noon. Door knock for 3.5 hours, usually with a pretty good sized team of volunteers. Um, Come back, I get an hour break, and then I head out back on the doors again and I knock until 8 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
I come back to the office and then I make phone calls for another hour. And then I go home and I basically walk into my house with my jacket and my runners on and I sit in my couch and I don't move. And my
You just like, do you want it to be silent after all of that
um
stimulus?
well, I am an extrovert. Like I absolutely draw my energy from other people. And so I feel like this incredible energy after being on the doors for 6, 7, sometimes 8 hours a day.
That's a long time
And
of
so
not.
I come home and my kids make fun of me. They're like, "What happened today, mom? Like, who did you talk to? What did you see?" And so I don't know, part of my day is decompressing and kind of letting go of some of the stories, both the good and the bad. And
Mm.
absolutely my family. My husband's very supportive and my kids. I've got two teenagers. And so just trying to find that space to decompress and get a good night's sleep. Because listen, campaigns, like I said, are both exhilarating and exhausting. And
Yeah.
we've been at this for a year and a half, right? And I mean, not a year and a half of like, 12, 14 hours for sure, but a year and a half of door knocking for sure.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think that if you've been knocking for that long, then you really are laying a foundation for hopeful electoral success. People really value that interaction at the doors. Are
They
you
do.
getting that response from people when you're talking to them?
For sure. I mean, I think, people know that I am a hardworking candidate. They know that's what they can expect if they elect me as their member of parliament. Uh, People want a chance to absolutely connect with their candidate one on one. And the number of folks who say, I've never seen a candidate at my door is
Mm.
overwhelming to me. And I think what a missed opportunity for other candidates who are running for election, not just in this federal election, but in previous elections, even municipal elections. People want to talk. People want to share what's in their heart, what their fears are. There's a lot of fear out there right now. People want to talk about what they want to see in their next member of parliament. And so yeah, this is how we win elections by connecting with folks. That's how we build the momentum too.
Well, I'll even say so yesterday I was at home in the morning and I had like, or at some point, whatever time it was, and I brought the mail inside. So
Yeah.
I knew that my mailbox was empty. And then when I left the house again, I saw that someone had been there and had done like a very interesting lit piece. But I was like, they didn't even knock, they just dropped it. And then I saw them actually walking down the street. I wanted to be like, you know, whose
You
house are
should
you
have run
whose
after
house
them.
are you dropping something at every? I wanted to have a conversation, right? But
Yeah,
I really value those things. But there's the strategy behind everything in every campaign is different.
totally. Yeah.
So give me the lay of the land in Edmonton Centre. You talked about, I want to talk about strategic voting because I think that's, there are what, 13 days left in the campaign and ish
And yeah. Yeah, I
13.
just checked my wall on my
Your
poster
countdown
on the wall
calendar.
here. Yeah,
Yeah.
countdown calendar. E minus 13,
And
Sarah.
debates are this week. There's like a lot going on. I think, the debates are going to be really pivotal.
Hmm.
So give me, explain for someone who's not from Edmonton
Totally.
and listening to this from another part of the country, what's the situation?
So the lay of the land here in Edmonton Centre is that there's no incumbent. And so, we have three candidates who are working hard to convince people to vote for them, right? There's been some shifts in this race in particular. Like I mentioned, I've been at it. I'm a former school board trustee. I held on to my job as trustee, while I was campaigning for this job. So there's me, the NDP candidate, who's, served this community as chair of the Edmonton Public School Board, and I was a journalist with CBC Edmonton for about 8 years, right? The Liberal situation is such that, as you know, Randy Boissonneau decided sort of at the 11th hour, really,
Very, very last
very
minute.
late, last minute, to not run in this election. And so there was some uncertainty about who would run. I mean, I'll tell you straight up, Sarah, I lost sleep over the fact that Mark Carney might be running here in Edmonton Centre. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm just going to be this footnote into the broader national story of Mark Carney, right? That didn't happen. And so we had a period of time where we had no idea who the Liberal candidate was going to be. And there was a lot of confusion. People were getting re-elect Randy Boissonneau flyers in their
Right.
mailboxes as soon as 5 days ago.
Which speaks to the very sudden nature of him announcing he's not running again.
It does, but it's amazing to me that the mailouts 2 weeks into an election campaign were still being pumped out
Well,
that said re-elect Randy Boissonneau, right?
yeah. Ooh.
While the new candidates' flyers are also being delivered. And so, yeah, the Liberals have a candidate who, I'll be honest with you, she seems like a lovely lady, but she's been parachuted in from a riding across the river in Edmonton, Strathcona, right? So she had literature printed that said Edmonton, Strathcona on it, and now she's running in Edmonton Centre.
That is very interesting, just from a
Yeah, and I think
campaign management kind of thing.
yeah.
That's
And this
very,
is a
very
riding that
unusual.
totally, and this is a riding that has flip-flopped between the Liberals and the Conservatives, right? And it's never been held by a New Democrat. And this is the time where we really feel like we can flip it. I mean, we are in the heart of provincial
Yes.
NDP solid, strong wins, right? And to door knock with incredible MLAs like Sarah Hoffman and David Shepherd and Janice Irwin, like we feel the support and the encouragement of the provincial NDP. And guess what? Albertans know the NDP brand now. They know
Yeah.
they can count on New Democrats to fight for them. And so having last federal election, having the electoral success of the incredible MP Blake Desjardins in Edmonton Griesbach, and of course the long-standing riding of Edmonton Strathcona being held first by Linda Duncan and then now by Heather McPherson for the last two elections, there really is an opportunity to win Edmonton Centre for the NDP this time. And I think there's a few factors at play there. I would say early on in the campaign, just back to sort of give you that lay of the land, Sarah,
Mhm.
this really did look like you drove around Edmonton Centre and all you saw were orange signs and blue signs. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be a race between the Conservatives and the New Democrats. And I'll tell you, there is a clear choice when you think about what Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are putting forward. And this candidate locally here that's running for the Conservatives, he ran for Danielle Smith in the UCP and lost to Sharif Haji. And so that is the lay of the land here. I talk to voters all the time who, and you mentioned this, who want to make sure, first and foremost, that they send good representation to Ottawa. I think people feel let down, quite frankly, by previous representation. And number two, they want to make sure, and I'm just looking for one of my flyers, they want to make sure, I don't have one here, they want to make sure that that a Conservative is not sent to Ottawa.
I mean, yeah, that is a talk about an interesting riding.
Oh,
That's
totally.
like that's
And
a
the
lot.
way, and the one thing I'd add to that, Sarah, is the way to stop the Conservatives from winning a seat here and potentially adding to Pierre Poilievre's seat count is
Mm,
to vote New Democrat this time. You know, we recently received a really lovely and wonderful endorsement from former premier of our province, Rachel Notley. She's fully endorsed my campaign, and she is encouraging all progressives. And when I say progressives, I mean folks who want to elect people who are there to serve them and keep in place some of the strong social programs, fight for families, fight for seniors, fight for issues around affordability and affordable housing. And so to receive that endorsement from former Premier Rachel Notley was huge for our campaign because
yeah.
we know lots of federal liberals supported Rachel, right? And so
Well, I mean,
that's the kind of momentum that we're seeing.
the
Yeah,
dynamics
here's what
of
we don't want. Here we go.
the dynamics of being in Alberta and running a campaign, you know, it's like, it's just people flip-flop, right? On the non conservative side of the political spectrum in Alberta, depending on and strategic voting is, you know,
Depending where you are,
mm,
this is a race where we were so close to winning in the last federal election. So I don't think it's a flip-flop.
no,
I think what's happening is the NDP base is strong and it's growing, right? So that's not a flip-flop, that's momentum.
okay.
I would say there are folks who perhaps are traditional liberals who vote provincially New Democrat,
Mhm.
who maybe have voted NDP federally in the past, and this time are saying, absolutely, you've got our vote, Trish.
So it's interesting because I think, especially here in Calgary, the strategic voting is around conversations around like I'm as an example, someone might say, I'm traditionally, I vote NDP, but in this election, I just can't risk that. And my vote is going to go to the Liberal because I think that they will be the most competitive against the Conservative candidate. That's, I would say, the dynamic here in Calgary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't, there are a lot more seats that recently flipped in the last provincial election from there was, some that flipped from the UCP to the NDP. So the
Hmm.
dynamic here is different in terms
It
of
is different. Yeah.
provincially being more safe NDP seats than here in Calgary.
That's right.
Um, so when someone, if you do have an interaction with a voter who is, like, oh, I just don't know if I can risk my vote going to the NDP in this election, even though this candidate, the Liberal candidate, was parachuted in, what do you say to them?
Well, I say vote with your heart. And I ask them where they're seeing the momentum.
Mm,
And in many neighborhoods in Edmonton Centre, you can visibly see that the momentum is with the NDP, right?
okay.
And I think people recognize how hard my team and I have been working. And not that hard work entitles you to win an election, it doesn't. But I do think people have a lot of respect for someone who, you know, has worked in the riding, who has served people as their school board trustee, who's been there, the chair of the Edmonton Public School Board through some pretty tumultuous times, right? The
Mhm.
pandemic and pretty significant cuts to public education. And, you know, people want to elect someone who knows these neighborhoods, who knows what this community's like, who knows the struggles that we face downtown. And so again, campaigns are about momentum. Campaigns, and you just don't build momentum in 2 weeks. It takes, in my mind, a winning campaign, it takes months, months and months to build that kind of momentum.
Mm. Well, and it's interesting because I don't know if momentum can be attached to the broader outside of Edmonton NDP campaign. Jagmeet Singh's a very polarizing person, both in Alberta and I would say nationally as well. And to be honest, I don't think that his political fortunes will continue to align on his side post-election, but we'll have to see how that plays out. Are you hearing concerns about Jagmeet Singh's leadership and his position on things like pipelines and oil and gas in Alberta in this election? Or are they really, does Trump and the threat of tariffs override everything? Or is it just completely different? Because Calgary, I have a Calgary perspective of a lens on things, or a BC lens. I've never lived in Edmonton. So what is it?
Mm.
What's the difference? Is there one?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So sort of stop me if there's points that I haven't hit on.
Yeah.
I would say here in Edmonton Centre, one of the conversations we have often about how important it is to focus on the local race.
Hmm.
No, you go into that ballot box and it's not Mark Carney's name that's on the ballot. It's not Jagmeet Singh and it's certainly not Pierre Poilievre's.
Right.
And so people in Edmonton Centre, we are absolutely encouraging, and the conversations we are having is it's about the local race. It's where your vote has the most power, right? And so that's what the strategic vote means. Yeah, people are excited about Mark Carney. Absolutely, being prime minister. Those same people know the way to make that happen is to vote NDP in this election to stop another conservative seat, right? And so if you follow that trajectory, all of a sudden the race conversation here in Edmonton Centre becomes about the local candidates. Um, yeah, we do talk about Jagmeet Singh. We talk about Mark Carney. We talk about the national leaders because I'll be honest, and this comes from a former journalism background of mine, the national media are obsessed with
Yes.
personality-driven politics. And as a woman in politics, and to not see a woman at the national scale, there's a real disservice that's happening. And I don't mean to throw my former colleagues at CBC under the bus, but I'm sick of this national sort of idolization of our leaders, right? Like, let's dig into the real politics and the real issues that are happening on the ground in the local race. People are hungry for those sorts of conversations rather than this national piece. And listen, like when we talk about national polls, a lot of people say, oh, the polls, the polls, the polls. There's no local riding by riding poll
Right.
for Edmonton Centre, for Calgary Confederation, for any riding across the country. And so, people really like to talk about these national trends and national polls. And yeah, there is some validity to those polls for sure. We are seeing a closening of a two-way race. I don't think anyone's surprised by that, right? The NDP has a
Yeah.
long history of being the moral conscience of this country, being the accountability party. But again, back to that polling piece, I think there's a very closely contested local race that's happening here, and that's what
Mm.
people are focused on.
Well, I completely agree. And there's also something that the NDP does really well. And that's something, a term that gets, is being used more often, which is vote efficiency. And that's something that
Yeah.
the NDP does really well. And, it's basically how, how, how concentrated of a turnout there is for an NDP vote as opposed to other parties. And the most recent Ontario election was a great example of that because,
Totally. Yeah,
right,
that's
the
a really good
NDP was
example.
polling very poorly, but because of that concentration of votes in those ridings where they do really well, they outperformed the
Hmm.
Liberals, which had been polling in second, and formed opposition.
Totally. And I think I completely agree with you on that. The other piece is that polling and the accuracy
Yeah,
of polling.
because
And I'll
it's
tell
just
you,
broad, right?
it
It's
is
not
broad
saying
and
it's not,
it's
yeah,
this aggregate, right? And as a journalist, I never, there would always be, oh, who wants to do the polling story today? I never put my hand up because I actually feel like it's actually kind of irresponsible to use national polls and transpose them onto a local race.
right.
Like this smart vote website, it doesn't, it's not accurate. And I think people need to do their homework. I think they need to do their research. I think they need to make an effort to meet the candidate and find out what's happening and not
Mhm.
rely on national aggregate polls, right?
Yeah, I think hopefully, I think democracy, the call upon us as individual voters is to do more than like an online quiz, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
do it, but then also go a step, what are you going to do after that?
Yeah.
Right. Maybe
Yeah.
that if you're feeling very unsure about where you may be on the political spectrum, maybe use that to get like a ballpark feel, but then find out because people, the candidates, even of the same party, can be so dramatically different. Like
Mhm.
you don't all think the same way. You're not all the same person. Uh,
Thankfully.
yeah. Well, yeah, and politics needs that diversity of people, right? And so go out and try and meet them or go to an all candidates debate. Go, speaking of debates, so the federal leaders are doing the French and English debates this week. Have you taken part in an all candidates debate yet?
There's one tomorrow night. It won't be all candidates. The conservative candidate is choosing not to participate, uh, which is his prerogative and his choice. I think it's a disservice to voters in Edmonton Centre, to be frank. I mean, this is the same candidate who's refusing every single media interview as well. So
Mm,
that raises concerns around transparency and accountability and, you know, who is the conservative candidate is a lot of questions that I get on the doorstep. So
right.
yeah, but
Well,
that's tomorrow night.
yeah, and I mean, I will share. I have reached out to a number of conservative campaigns asking them to be on the podcast. I haven't even gotten a no thanks.
Hmm.
There's just been radio silence, and so I mean, yeah, that leaves me to fill in to come to my own conclusions about like what their strategy is in terms of media.
It's a
But
control strategy, right?
yes,
It's
I
a
would say
control the
so.
narrative strategy, and
But honestly, it would do, the conservative campaign a lot of good, to be honest, if more candidates were to actually talk about themselves. Um, if there was to be a switch in campaign strategy, but to be honest, however people want to run their campaign, that's up to them and the central party, right?
yeah, I think it underscores sort of the overall disdain, actually, that conservatives have for traditional media and a willingness to play into divisive politics and feed right-wing, misogynistic, divisive, fear factor kind of news journalism, using air quotes there, that we see so common in conservative politics. I mean, there's a Trump playbook, and Pierre Poilievre's absolutely playing by it.
Well, oh, hello. We've been joined by a special guest. Hi, Lola. My
Oh,
dog.
hello.
Um, yeah, well, as someone who is absolutely not a journalist, and there's a big difference between, me doing this podcast with you and, someone who has gone to journalism school, for example. I think there's a place for traditional media and,
I agree.
new media. Um, uh, but, I think that the use of new media has been shown and demonstrated the value of it in other campaigns. Like even using, Kamala Harris's decision not to appear on the Joe Rogan podcast. Like,
Hmm.
if there's a university lecture out there somewhere dissecting that decision, I would love to be a part of it and to know,
Hmm.
to be a part of that conversation because, traditional media is stretched to the bone, right? Like how, and even with decisions by the conservative campaign, for example, not to even have media on their plane.
Hmm.
All of these things factor into how campaigns are covered.
Hmm.
They just don't have the resources. So it's, it can be conversations like the one that we're having that, reaches more local voters,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Outside of seeing what's happening on the evening news. But does your media background and your time as the chair of the Edmonton Public School Board, like how does that inform, the work that you will do if elected as the MP for Edmonton Centre? What would you take from those positions?
Well, I would say, like, right now I'm so focused on the campaign, and I would say even just having those connections that I've made through my time serving as the chair of the school board and my time reporting on people in this city and working alongside people has helped inform me for sure. Um, when I think about, and like women in politics, we draw our skills from all sorts of different
Mhm.
areas, right? As moms, as people who support other people, as caregivers, I was with my dad in his final years of his life and saw how important that caregiver role is and the role that women usually assume and the burden that we carry with that, right? Um, and also being in spaces where I see a lot of women who look like me. And we need to see more women from racialized backgrounds. We need to see more gender queer folk. We need to see folks with disabilities, right? Like
Mhm.
we need to
100%.
truly see more intersectional feminism, right? And so yeah, of course. My life experiences, both as a journalist reporting across this country and stations across this country, has informed where I am today. My work as a school board trustee. I mean, I think that's the story of women in politics. Like we lean into these different parts of our lives, right? And ultimately, every time I go to the doors and I am in a conversation with someone, I'm there to listen. I'm there to learn. And that's just maybe just who I am, but certainly my working as a journalist as long as I did has honed that ability to take someone's story and hold it. And then what are we going to do with it? Right? What are we going to do with that nugget? What are we going to do with and in my head, I was just saying to my campaign manager last night, I met two women, seniors, like in their 60s and 70s. Neither one of them have a cell phone or a landline. And the reason they can't afford it. So what do I do with that Lynn? What do I do with Lynn's story and her struggle and can't buy a cell phone and $40 a month to spend on groceries after rent is paid? Well, you know what we do as New Democrats? We take that and we advocate. We take that and we push for rent control. We take that and we push for grocery price caps. We take that and we make this election. Yes, it's about Trump and what's happening to the south of us, but this is an election about affordability. This is an election about how we take care of each other as Canadians. And so those are the skills that I'm leaning on and just trying to keep the bigger picture in mind. If I'm elected, I am whom I am, right? And I bring my life experiences and my skills hopefully into that job to serve people. This is a job about service. This is a
Mhm.
job about listening. And I really value running into conservative folks who are voting NDP for the first time because they look at the local race and they say to me, "You're the best candidate. I think you're going to serve me the best." And that's a value that I hold dear. And I'm not going to vote conservative. I'm going to vote New Democrat. And we have a high five. And I say, I look forward to serving you.
How many of those conversations have you had from?
To be fair, there's not a lot of them.
Okay.
I flip liberals all the time. It's rare to flip a conservative for sure. But when you run into a voter who understands what service and representation means and they hear the my story, they hear how genuine I am about that service.
Mm.
Yeah, people can move. People who have open minds can absolutely be convinced to vote for the candidate over the party.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting how people can get to, that pencil mark on their ballot,
Yeah,
right? And for me, it changes every election. Some people it doesn't change at all. But it reassures me greatly that people are still open to having those
me
conversations.
too. Me too. And there's people are looking for hope right now.
Oh
There's a
yeah.
lot to vote against. There's a lot of fear and divisiveness, but there's hope. And I believe you show up on someone's door and you listen to what their concerns are, and then you talk about what electing a new Democrat MP could mean for them. And yeah, we're not going to form government. I know that. But are we going to fight like heck for people in this part of our city? Absolutely we are. And that gives people hope, and that's what people want, and that's what people need right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And, I think, we can see the model of a two-party system in the United States and how that doesn't serve people. I
Absolutely.
am the mind that, um, the more voices in Parliament from different parties advocating for different things makes for better decisions for all Canadians.
Totally. Yeah. Well said.
So in this election, yeah, strategic voting comes into play, and depending on where you are, that might look different. You know, so people would select you. I'm curious though. I know you were outdoor knocking with Rachel Notley.
Yeah.
Well, did you, if you can share it, like, what was that conversation like in between the doors? What were you guys chatting about?
Oh, Rachel Notley is an experienced,
Yeah. Isn't she incredible?
she is incredible. And, the opportunity to take a moment and connect with voters with her on the
Yeah.
doorstep,
What was that like when people opened their door and it
people,
was you and Rachel Notley?
yeah, yeah, yeah. First, they shook her hand first, full stop.
Okay.
Um, and a lot of the folks we talked to had said, "Oh, you were at my door like 6 months ago," or "Oh, I remember our conversation from a year ago," and "Oh, it's great," and "Yeah, you've got my support," right? And so having a political titan or a political, such a huge supporter of Albertans, right? In our corner is huge for us, and to just snatch just a little bit of her time, to have that fun on the doorsteps was awesome. And like, this is it. Like, campaigns are a lot of fun, and I covered them as a journalist, and I had a lot of fun covering campaigns as a journalist. But to be the candidate, to hit the ground, to knock on doors with amazing people like Rachel Notley and Heather McPherson, and Charlie Angus was here recently, and just incredible people who want to find a way to elect more new Democrats and people serving people. Like, it's
Mhm.
it's fun. It's inspiring. Rachel Notley's inspiring, right? Like, she shows up with her boots, and I've got my runners on, and she's a mover, right? Like, we move fast on the doors, right? I'm a hustler on the doors, and she is too. And so it was a lot of fun to kind of do that together the other night.
Yeah, I saw a photo of that and I was like, oh, that looks like it would have been really fun to be on
It
that
was really fun. Yeah.
knocking crew. Yeah. So we're gonna wrap up in just a couple of minutes, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to like, so if anyone is curious about your campaign and
Yeah.
how to reach out to you or to follow what you're doing, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Oh, the best way is, and I mean, we are, I don't know if you can see behind me, but we are in the heart of Edmonton Centre. We've got a busy campaign office. I encourage folks to stop by, say hi. I'm not here very often, but my campaign team
Well, not if
is
you're spending
is
eight
here.
hours on the
Amazing.
doors a
No,
day.
exactly.
Yeah.
No. So stop by our campaign office. It's in Manchester Square, which is on 120th Street and 107th Ave. You can call the campaign office. The number is 780-665-5989. Can follow me on social media. I'm always up for a conversation. This is the thing about me. I'll always make time to chat with anyone. And so, you call the campaign office and you say you want to have a chat with me, I will return that phone call. So there's lots of ways to get in touch. We're running in a campaign where there's lots of way to get some touch on social media. But again, let's never forget the best way to connect, especially during a campaign of such significance, is
Mhm.
to have that face-to-face conversation, have it on the doors, have it on the streets, have it in a senior's home, come by the campaign office, and let's have that chat face-to-face, one-to-one.
Even with people who have completely opposing views.
Oh yeah, I love talking to people who disagree with me, actually. I
Yeah.
think that's the greatest downfall of social media, is that
A
we're all
100%.
drinking each other's bathwater. And
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I don't like to drink my own bathwater. But
I
that's what's
mean,
happening on
when
social
presented
media.
with the opportunity, I don't think anybody would. So, well, I really want to say thank you for making the time in your day to do this. And, hopefully our paths cross one day in real life.
I
And,
love it. It's an
and
honor to be on your podcast, Sarah, and keep
no,
up the good work. I had a podcast years ago called The Broadcast.
oh,
Yeah, the broadcast. It was sort of the first podcast about women in politics.
Okay.
Um, the links are still out there, but I encourage anyone who listened to the broadcast to switch and listen to yours because I think you're doing a great service for women in politics and
Well, and I'll give
encouraging
you,
women.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'll give you, you're the first person I'm telling. Actually, I haven't even told my husband. I have a new or a revamped podcast with another Alberta woman in politics that's going to be launching this week.
Amazing. Well,
So our
congratulations on that.
working title is oh, what was it? Um, I don't know, but it's going to be spicy. I can tell you that. I can tell you that. Yeah, it's going to be spicy.
I
So
love it. I look
yeah,
forward to it coming out
yeah. Thanks,
and
Trisha.
when our paths cross again. Thanks, Sarah.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, bye.